this brand new edition of Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. As always, we have a packed show for you with all the top news stories from around the globe. Let's get started with our big focus tonight. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a 3-day visit to the United States for a series of important bilateral and multilateral engagements. Over the weekend, he met with Quad leaders and held one-on-one talks with US President Joe Biden. However, even as the US talks about strengthening India-US ties and refers to New Delhi as a trusted partner, one development stuck out like a sore thumb. On the eve of Prime Minister Modi's visit, 2 days before it to be precise, the White House met with a group of Khalistanis separatists. Significantly, this is the first time ever that the White House has officially engaged with such groups, and they assured these Khalistani separatists of protection from any transnational aggression on American soil. The White House said it is committed to protecting American citizens from harm while they are within the borders of the United States. This development comes amid growing concerns in India that Canada and the United States are giving shelter and asylum to Khalistani separatists. Groups aligned to the Khalistan separatist movement are banned in India, and several of these organizations have carried out subversive, even terrorist activities in India through the decades. The meeting was held within the official White House complex and attended by Preetpal Singh of the American Sikh Caucus Committee and representatives from the Sikh Coalition and Sikh American Legal Defense and Education Fund. Media reports stated that senior American National Security Council officials initiated and arranged the closed-door meeting in which US intelligence officials were also present. The reports quote attendees as saying, "The officials briefed a group of Sikh advocates about the government's ongoing conversations with India." In a social media post on X, Preetpal Singh thanked the US officials for their vigilance in protecting Sikh Americans, as he put it. He said, "We will hold them to their assurances to do more to safeguard our community. Freedom and justice will prevail." Last week, US Congressman Adam Schiff introduced the Transnational Repression Reporting Act 2024 that says transnational repression or the targeting of diaspora members is on the rise, particularly from India, Saudi Arabia, Iran and China. The text of the act specifically details the preliminary investigation results of the Pannu case that accuse Indian officials of the plot, charges which have yet to be proven in court, and calls for mandatory briefing by the government on such cases. All this comes in the wake of claims that there was a plot to assassinate Gurpatwant Singh Pannu on American soil. Pannu, who has been designated as a Khalistani terrorist by India, has accused India of hatching the alleged assassination plot. Remember, Pannu has claimed responsibility for several terror incidents in India. In April 2023, in a video shared on social media, he openly threatened to harm Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Pannu founded the Khalistan separatist group Sikhs for Justice or SFJ in 2007. India banned the group in 2019 under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act for its anti-India activities. In 2020, Pannu was designated a terrorist by India. He holds a dual citizenship of the United States and Canada and is currently in the US. His banned separatist organization operates out of New York. Pannu recently filed a civil lawsuit against the government of India and its national security advisor Ajit Doval in a US court. The lawsuit led to the issuance of summons from the US District Court for the Southern District of New York to Ajit Doval and other Indian officials. The lawsuit also names Nikhil Gupta, an Indian national who has been charged by federal prosecutors in the US for working with an Indian government employee in the alleged foiled plot to kill Pannu. This meeting of the Khalistani separatists with US officials at the White House and its timing have infuriated many in India. They ask, how is this not a provocation and an instance of duplicity, where on the one hand the United States refers to India as an important friend and trusted partner, but on the other displays shocking insensitivity to its security concerns by patronizing elements who are clearly inimical to India and threaten its territorial integrity and sovereignty. After all, these experts argue Washington is well aware of the violent nature of the Khalistanis secessionist movement that seeks to carve out of India an independent state called Khalistan. In the 1980s, the Khalistani insurgency posed a huge national security challenge for New Delhi and caused the assassination of a sitting Indian Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi. Former Foreign Secretary and Chancellor of the Jawaharlal Nehru University, Kanwal Sibal, reacting to this incident, has said, "It's difficult to understand what the US hopes to gain from such a provocation. The US is encouraging those who are working against India's sovereignty and territorial integrity." Sibal has called for a serious pushback from India if the White House does not clarify its position. The question we're asking is this: why this dual message from the United States? Shouldn't the US be sensitive to the security concerns of its friend and trusted partner? Some ask, is it the dual strategy of engagement and containment at play? All right, let's introduce our guests on Global Lens tonight. Joining me on the show is Lieutenant General Sanjay Kar, defense and geopolitical expert. In a moment, we're also hoping to be joined by Ambassador Suresh Goel, former Indian diplomat, and Dr. Vineet Prakash, associate professor at the Center for US and Canadian Studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University. Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, a warm welcome to Global Lens. Let me begin with you. Now, this is not the first time that, there's been a provocation from countries like Canada and the United States that have been sheltering these Khalistani elements that are clearly inimical to India for a long time now. However, there is a first in the development that we are talking about. And that is that this was the first time that the White House officially engaged with these Khalistani separatist groups and gave them an assurance that the United States would do everything to protect them on American soil. Now, what has infuriated a lot of people here in India is, one, the doublespeak or the duplicity of the United States, which on the one hand refers to India as a friend and a trusted partner, and on the other displays such shocking insensitivity to its security concerns. And to make matters worse, the timing is what is absolutely curious, some would say infuriating, because this meeting happened exactly 2 days before Prime Minister Narendra Modi's arrival in the United States. How do you look at this double speak or dual messaging from the United States?
Thank you, Niha. I must say provocative, definitely provocative. And second, a betrayal, primarily because it has come at a wrong time. This is not the time. They knew there's a Quad meet, which otherwise should have been held in Delhi. It was held in the United States, primarily because the government of the United States wanted it to be held over there. If that be so, and it was agreed upon, and then they knew that the Prime Minister is coming to the United States, and then again at the behest of the White House. And that's what is bad. They hadn't called for it. It's the White House which went all about trying to engage with these Khalistanis, separatists, secessionists, and knowing fully well that India had declared Pannu, or Pannan, whichever way you want to call him, I'll call him Pannu, is the one who is a declared offender, a terrorist. Would the United States have liked something like that if the head of state from the United States was to visit India? Definitely not. And at a time when India sees the United States as someone, a trusted partner, a friend, and therefore, if, like what you rightly said, if an engagement also is a containment policy, engage with giving all kinds of SOPs, saying that, look, we'll do semiconductors and Quad and all that. And then at the same time, try and also, well, I wouldn't use a very strong word, but definitely containment, to say that, look, if you don't draw a line, it's something like in olden times, sovereignty, suzerainty. That means I shall sit on the top table and you, well, if you wish to, you can be seated on the floor. That's not the way friends are. Definitely not the way the democracies see each other. And especially now, even if it is so that, well, India does feel that China is a threat, and that America should so consider that let us exploit at this weakness of India, which they feel and perceives China a threat, and therefore we will now extract whatever that we desire to from India. And then again, India also seems to feel that Russia also they also engage America. India must not engage Russia at all. No, that's not the way. India has always believed in non-alignment. India engages with everybody as equal partners. India respects United States for all that it has been doing, has done, and I'm sure will continue to do, because what even the Prime Minister very clearly said, if knowledge is power, it will be shared. Wealth is sharing, and so is the prosperity is for sharing, and the power is for protecting. So if everything, all of it is falling in place, and the kind of reception that the Prime Minister gets every time he goes to the United States, and you find a small group, I won't say it's a very big group, but it's a small group, and for that small group, which seems to be totally anti-India, there is no doubt, then to give this kind of a protection, then indulge in what you rightly use the word duplicity, I think it's something which the United States, if it wishes to continue, and this of course gives a clear signal to India that look, security of India is India's responsibility. India cannot trust anybody. No partnership, nothing of that any kind. If anything has to happen, it's Atmanirbhar India. Atmanirbhar India, not with a view to substitute import. It is with a view to design, to manufacture, and to ensure its manufacturing with full state-of-the-art within India and for the Indian needs and Indian desire, Indian user. If that be so, then only probably, because all these kind of threats, you see what's happened in Bangladesh, well, lots of power to play with in Bangladesh. Well, United States for St. Martin Island, China for its own interest because it wants its gas and pipelines to go, and these, you see Pakistan's interest in it since 1971, how to destabilize, and the powers that be in Bangladesh calling it Liberation 2.
Right.
What is all this? This is all clearly indicative that it is definitely not hunky-dory. We have to be careful. We have to be vigilant. And that's the only way. I think timing was definitely wrong.
The timing was definitely wrong, raises a lot of questions, and has raised the hackles of many in New Delhi, and with good reason. And you make an excellent point there. If history has taught India one important lesson, it is this, that it has to be self-reliant when it comes to its own security. It cannot count on any other country, especially when you see this kind of a blow hot, blow cold approach from the United States of America. Let me take this to Ambassador Suresh Goyal. Ambassador Goyal, a lot of people are asking why this provocation from the United States and why now? The timing was particularly awkward. Some say it was meant to, in a sense, embarrass New Delhi because it came on the eve of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United States. This is the same Washington that, is often very displeased when India engages with Russia. When Prime Minister Modi goes to Moscow, Washington does not like it. But the same Washington will invite Khalistani groups to the White House and officially engage with them on the eve of the Prime Minister of India's visit and give them an assurance of their safety on American soil. I want to quote to you what former Foreign Secretary Kanwal Sibal has said reacting to this development. He has said it's difficult to understand what the US hopes to gain from such a provocation. The US is encouraging those who are working against India's sovereignty and territorial integrity. And then Mr. Sibal goes on to call for a serious pushback from India if the White House does not clarify its position. Your thoughts?
Neha, thank you very much. Good evening, rather late in the evening. My apologies. I'm going to be very, very frank in my usual tradition, Neha, and I'm sure that you will allow me that kind of candor that I normally bring to the discussion. Now, I fully agree with Ambassador Sibal that as to why the US doing this. Let us look at it. People who are embarrassed are the people who are on a weak wicket. Are we on a weak wicket? Do we need to be embarrassed by these kind of things? The USA is doing what they need to do. This is an election year in the USA. Democratic candidate, Kamala Harris, she may be an Indian by birth or by origin, but she's an American candidate. And she's contesting for the American presidentship. And she's fighting on a Democratic ticket. And we all know that for the Democratic Party, the human rights are one big thing. And therefore, I think we need to basically, I'm not saying condoning it, I'm not saying overlooking it, etc., but we need to understand why it is happening the way it is happening. And therefore, compare what actually happened in Delaware with what happens in Washington. In Delaware, you would notice a complete bonhomie between Biden, even if he forgot to introduce Prime Minister Modi, that's a different thing altogether.
That was clearly a senior moment, one of his many senior moments.
Absolutely. But despite all that, the kind of bonhomie we had in the Quad meeting, the kind of bonhomie we had in the bilateral meeting, the kind of gains we had on the technology front, semiconductors, predator, etc., how it goes ahead, I mean, there are so many ifs and buts. But we need to really see the contrast in the two situations from the point of view that if we in India, when we are dealing with our national interest and we are dealing with Ukraine, and we have conveyed a clear message to the USA that our national interests are ours. We need oil from Russian Federation. And the USA just looks the other way because they have no options. When we want to buy oil or we want to invest in the port in Iran, the USA condones it. So it's a question of what they're looking in the relationship. And I would really look at it more from the permanent point of view. There will be always irritants. Let us face it, no relationship is perfect. Even between, I'm sorry, I'm saying it again, even between husband and a wife, the relationship is never perfect. There are quarrels, there are disagreements, and so is between the USA and India. I think we do need to look at a more long-term point of view where we are. And if we want our security in the Indo-Pacific region, where the bull or the dragon in the China shop is China, we need the USA. And the USA is prepared to be with us. And therefore, if we can carry both USA and Russia in the region together, what more do we need? So let us look at it this way. Minor irritants, ignore it. Deal with it. There are always problems. We will have to deal with them. But look at the larger and the longer point of view.
Okay, yeah. Look at the big picture. Very interesting analogy of a marriage there. Look at India and the United States as a married couple. They will continue to squabble on multiple issues as all married couples do. But at the end of the day, well, they are stuck with each other. They're married to each other and they're stuck with each other. So they better learn to deal with each other. Let me take this to Dr. Vineet Prakash. Dr. Vineet Prakash. Provocation and betrayal on part of the United States, as Lieutenant General Sanjay Kar and many others seem to feel, or as Ambassador Suresh Goel says, little more than realpolitik on part of the Biden-Harris administration, which is facing a tough election in just a few weeks. A lot of people have also pointed out the silence of the Indian government, the Ministry of External Affairs, over this entire issue. They haven't released any statement. Of course, the visit of the Prime Minister to the United States has gone ahead as scheduled, and as has been pointed out, we saw that usual bonhomie on display between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden. But really, what do you make of the duality in this messaging from the United States?
Neha, definitely the timing is suspicious and it might indicate towards some kind of dual messaging. But as Ambassador Goel pointed out, we need to look at the big picture, and such incidents can be treated as small blips in a very long and healthy relationship or a very long and healthy evolving relationship. So we need to be thick-skinned when it comes to managing important relationships. And sometimes these kind of provocations might arise, these kind of irritants might take place. The reason behind them is that just like India, US is also a democracy, And democracies are not monolithic countries like China or Russia, which speak in one voice, or where you have only one person and his only that person's voice matters. So you do have different interests pulling in different directions, and as a result of that, we can see sometimes these kind of incidents happening. And of course, as the Ambassador Goyal pointed out, the USA is going through an election cycle. So that also could be one of the reasons where there might be some elements in the Democratic Party which might be trying to pander towards these constituents in order to gain their support. Then we also need to make sure that such incidents do not affect the overall tenor of the relationship, the overall direction of the relationship. So that is something which I would like to quickly point out towards. And that is why, if you, as you yourself pointed out, Indian government is not reacting very strongly, and definitely we did take note of it. Then the second thing which I would like to point out towards, apart from the US being a democratic country, where multiple opinions might exist, US judicial system is also very unique, where it is not controlled by the government. And if you look at it, it's a civil suit brought by Panun. It's not like it's the direct action of the US federal government. And just to point out one incident to show the independence of the judicial system in US, there's a case going on against the president's son, Hunter Biden. And I mean, in probably any other country, say like which is not democratic, say like China, for example, or let's say any other country XYZ, not taking names, something of this sort would be unimaginable. A case going on against the president's son, and the president is not being able to do anything about it. Similar incidents have happened in the past. So if somebody is trying to impute that this is a direct handiwork of the US government, well, I would say we should not reach those conclusions, but we should try to work around these irritants and build a better coordinated relationship between India and US. The third thing which I would like to point out towards is that there is definitely a Cold War ecosystem which continues to persist in the US State Department, which continues to look at India from the Cold War mindset, which does not trust India. At the same time, we also have a very strong constituency in the US State Department, which believes that India can be a useful partner going forward. And both India and US can work towards convergences, and they can work towards interests which are mutually beneficial to the two countries. So there are multiple voices. There are multiple pressures which are pulling in different directions. So India needs to avoid stepping into those pitfalls and continue to work on this mutually beneficial relationship. And that is what I think is going to happen in future.
It is a mutually beneficial relationship that we must not jeopardize. I don't think it is anybody's case that we should jeopardize that very, very important relationship. However, what would be an ideal response from India? To just ignore it and move on? Let's discuss that after this quick break here on Global Lens. Don't go anywhere.
Fast.
My God, isn't she your daughter?
Yes.
She's playing football. This is boys' game. Make her study. If she doesn't get a good job, she will get a good match. Will you win the world by playing football?
Yes, auntie. My daughter will win the world by playing football.
Let's go to Germany.
World's largest football talent hunt, News9 Indian Tigers and Tigresses, in association with DFB Pokal, Bundesliga, BVB and India Football Center. Train and play matches in Europe. Register now and fly to Germany. IndianTigersandTigresses.com.
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface but not the living people?
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. Let me go back to Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni at this point. General Kulkarni, earlier you mentioned that perhaps the United States thinks India's position is a little weak vis-a-vis the growing threat from China, and that is something that can be exploited. But shouldn't it really be the other way around? Because if anybody today poses a real threat to the United States supremacy and very position as a global superpower, it is China, and that is one reason many analysts believe that the United States is looking to India to act as a countervailing force against China, especially in this region. Do you believe that, when we talk about the duplicity that's been on display, the United States referring to India as a friend and a trusted partner on the one hand, talking about making India part of the big semiconductor supply chain, for instance, this is something that has come up during this visit, and on the other hand, encouraging these Khalistani elements that are inimical to India. Do you see this as some sort of a carrot and stick policy? You earlier mentioned you believe that this is a dual strategy of engagement and containment, even though our other guests seem to think this is just realpolitik. They have an election in a few weeks and India needs to perhaps ignore these minor irritants, focus on the big picture, which essentially tells us that this is a very important bilateral relationship. But do you believe that this is some sort of a carrot and stick policy that the United States has been using against India for a long time now?
Neha, elections come and go, no problems whatsoever. But the fact still remains that it's the bureaucrats, the other intelligence, academia, which does govern and trust America into doing what it is doing. Husband and wife quarrel, I go along with the ambassador. He's absolutely right. But between the couple, there should be no trust deficit. Whatever it may be, that is healthy relationship, you do debate, you do discuss, but trust deficit, because you know what had happened. America knows what had happened in India. We have fought the insurgency in Punjab for a long, long time. When everything was coming back on trail, we know what's going on in Canada. We know what the people in Punjab are doing. We know the state of Punjab. We know what the kind of enemy we have in Pakistan. Pakistan uses terrorism as an instrument of state policy. It is using drones to drop weapons, drugs, all kinds of things that are inimical to India. At this point of time, when Khalistanis, whatever be the number, maybe a 1%, maybe small, irrelevant, whatever it may be. Again, if you put it, the camel will still, will grow in muddy waters only. It will bloom in muddy waters only. No problem whatsoever. But that's not the way we look at it. After all, freedom of speech, yes, I go along with Dr. Jaishankar, but definitely not freedom of such there is total support to the separatists. That's not freedom. Because all said and done, America understands we are a country which respects America. That's where we find the Prime Minister, every time he goes there, 15,000 people, 25,000 people, 50,000 people turn up to listen to him. And that shows very clearly that there is a strength of the Indians in America, and maybe the election here, they may feel the swing going one way or the other way, and then there is a part of that population, so the Indians who are Khalistanis, calling themselves Khalistanis, will vote for a particular candidate or otherwise. But that's not the way we do. After all, relationships are on a very firm footing. What you just said is a win-win situation. Both the countries, a common enemy, China. If that be so, if common enemy is China, under no circumstances, whatever it is, one doesn't mind to indulge and call and do whatever. The timing, it was trying to convey to India, the messaging, and that was wrong. That's very well clear that you know what it is. And it isn't that they called for the meeting. It's the White House which invited them. And having invited them, briefed them what it would be. And I also understand, would we continue to brief them as to what has transpired? Is that the way we do? Were these Khalistanis a small group, absolutely, which does not count at all? And who are they? The separatists, the secessionists, with whom we have fought insurgency. We've lost troops, we've lost boys, we've lost so many civilians in fighting this insurgency. And again, you find in the state of Punjab, you see the governments in Punjab which have been coming and going. What kind of relationship they have with the central government? under these circumstances, it's very important that America, whatever it be, at this point of time, do what you want to do, but don't show it, and then release the leak that this is what we have done in the White House, this is what has transpired between us and them, and then, whoever that Preetpal Singh then says this, Pannu says this. What is all this? Giving them such importance? They are, after all, declared terrorists. Had we done it to the ones who have been declared terrorists by America, to be doing that kind of a glorification of those in India, would they like it? Nobody would like it. And now at this point of time, when you see that there are two democracies, world's two largest democracies, growing together, believe in the rule of law, believe in everything, if they start doing this kind of thing, does it look nice? Now, have we China inviting people over to the embassies? We haven't liked it. Why would anybody like such a thing to be done? Why interference into the internal affairs of India? That is not done. Well, external, yes, definitely. Good relationships, all mean semiconductors, chips, technology, military transfer, these technologies been given. Perfect, everything. We rather respect, and we will ensure, because this compatibility between the two defense forces is a huge thing. It's a plus point, it's a force multiplier. Indo-Pacific is one region where the rule of law and freedom of navigation is there, and Quad is getting strength. It is just not other deals that we are talking about, but definitely our capacity building leads to ensuring Indo-Pacific region to be free of any threat. Because China is a big threat. It has a huge navy. It may have not the quality navy, but it is #1 navy in the world. Do we have to doubt that? 351 ships. It's not a joke. Americans don't have. Quality may not be there. Quantity is there. And they have the ability to be of nuisance all along Indian Ocean and in the Pacific. Look what they're doing here in the South China Sea. They care to hoots for what the world is saying. They have continued to do.
Therefore, doesn't the US need India in that context more than India needs the United States?
Absolutely. And therefore, since it's a win-win situation, all the more reason you must be able to take your friends along and not do these kind of aberrations which tell you, well, there's a trust deficit that is growing and internal interference. Because we saw what has happened in Bangladesh. It's clear interference which has led to it. Otherwise, why would the former Prime Minister say, some white man met me and said this and that? Nobody says like this, and you know what's going on. Everybody understands that. But I think at this point of time, definitely, irrespective election, irrespective of whatever may be happening over there, I think Americans, one has to be cautious, because history does tell us we have to be on our own. We cannot trust and rely.
So a trust deficit is never good for a friendship. But before I take this to the other panelists, General Kulkarni, I want to ask you a quick question. What do you think India's response to this provocation, if you look at it that way, should be? So far, the government of India is absolutely silent on this issue. Of course, our Prime Minister is still on American soil. Maybe we will hear from the Ministry of External Affairs once the Prime Minister is back home. Ambassador Kanwal Sibal has said that if the White House does not clarify its position, then there should be a serious pushback from India. But then there are those like Ambassador Goel who says, we need to just ignore this and move on. What, according to you, should be India's response?
See, I would, in this respect, go along with Ambassador Goel, ignore and carry on, give them another chance, not let's, confront them, but definitely convey in uncertain terms the very fact that so many think tanks, they are on your channel, discussing that. This also reaches to the American, whoever matters, that things where India doesn't accept this kind of duplicity in relationship. India expects absolutely good, friendly relationship with America, irrespective of war, irrespective of Indo-Pacific, irrespective of transfer of technology, irrespective of the military support and the kind of engagement that we have with America. Friends are friends, and definitely this kind of an insurgency, when we know in India, there are people who are doing it. We know what's happening in Punjab. It is nothing that is hidden from anybody. So I think America should take that as a thing. But definitely we can ignore at this point of time, but convey, like what Mr. Sibal said, and I also go along with Ambassador Goel, ignore at this point of time.
Okay, Ambassador Goel, let me ask you this. As has been pointed out by General Kulkarni and many other analysts, Washington is well aware of what the kind of threat that the Khalistani secessionist movement poses to India's territorial integrity and sovereignty, the fact that the Khalistani movement has cost India dear, especially if you go back to the decade of the 1980s, where we lost a sitting prime minister to this movement, Indira Gandhi's assassination, and the militancy that we saw in Punjab. This is a very serious matter. Without blowing it out of proportion, the meeting that happened a few days ago at the White House, do you believe that perhaps India does need to consider conveying some sort of a message to Washington at some level that we are at the very least uncomfortable with what happened at the White House a few days ago? I'm not suggesting issuing a démarche to, the US ambassador, summoning him to South Block. But, if we are friends, then surely friends should be able to communicate their concerns to each other.
Neha, if I understand you right, what you're saying would already have been done. There are many informal conversations between the diplomats from one country to the other country, foreign offices, etc., etc. And all this level of discomfort would already have been conveyed. Therefore, please rest assured that the Americans would be aware of how we feel about the meeting. And the timing was bad, yes, I completely agree. But 2 or 3 things. Americans are very ham-handed about these matters. I still remember when I was in the United Nations, we used to have many conversations with the American diplomats dealing with the USA. And I would wonder to myself very often, how could they even think this way? If they know what they're dealing with, they would be slightly more aware of what our sensitivities are, how we think. But no. I mean, a country which can allow its citizens to wear shoes with the United Nations flag on the top of the shoes, I mean, what do you think of it? We would never do that. But this is what the Americans are, and we should understand that for Americans, they are thick-skinned. They understand everything, but they're thick-skinned. But then the long-term interests matter more than what short-term sensitivities are, number one. Number two, the Americans again, internal security. If we are strong, internal security is our affair. We should know how to deal with the Khalistanis in Punjab. We should know how to deal with the separatism in our own country. If we can't do it, and Neha, I'm saying it with all consciousness here, if we can't do it, there will be countries, not just Pakistan or China, there will be countries who will meddle in our affairs. So we need to build our strength and deal with the situation and leave the rest to it really. And I can assure you that if we were to deal with the situation in India the way we think is appropriate, Americans may make the hoo-ha and everything, but they will not really go beyond hoo-ha. Last thing. If we today have the nuclear 123 agreement with the USA, if today we are talking about the critical emerging technologies with the USA, if today we are talking about the semiconductors with the USA, it's not just because of India what it is, but it is because there is a presence of the whole lot of Indian professionals in the USA who are working in critical sectors, and they are pushing for it. So let us understand where the USA-India relationship is coming from. It is coming from not just basically what India wants or what the USA wants, but it is basically coming from what we both need. And I will rest here.
It's a mutual need. Absolutely agree. And at the end of the day, that's what diplomacy is all about. At the end of the day, it is really governed by every country's own self-interest. So let me put this question to Dr. Prakash as we wrap up this conversation. Dr. Prakash, when we talk about, the sort of the carrot being dangled by the United States, as some have put it, the semiconductor deal with India, one that is promising and that could help India emerge as a major semiconductor powerhouse in the years to come. But that is again not charity that's being done by the United States. It's not a favor that's being doled out to India. At the end of the day, we know, as I said in my earlier, in the earlier segment, at the risk of sounding repetitive, that you know, if China poses the biggest threat to anyone today, especially given its growing economic clout, it is to the supremacy of the United States. And the United States needs India as a reliable partner to contain China in this region.
Yeah, you have a point, Neha, over there. And like when I go into a class of international politics, the first thing which I tell my students is in international politics, there's nothing like friends or enemies. The only thing which matters is what your interests are. And every country has to strive to protect its interests. So that is what India should also do. India should also not get into the trap of giving emotional response to events like what happened in the past couple of days. And instead, we need to have a hard-nosed approach about what is of benefit to India, what is going to take India on the path of becoming a stronger country in future. And in that equation, US definitely can play a very important role because everything, including power and your power projection capabilities, are dependent upon technology and secondly upon money. And US can play a very important role in helping India grow its economy, becoming an economic powerhouse. This is what China did. They piggybacked on exporting to US to become an economic powerhouse. Secondly, US can provide India with critical technologies which can be of use in building India's military base and manufacturing capabilities in times to come. So definitely, we can do it on our own, but it is going to take much longer. We were able to ultimately develop, say, technologies which were deprived to India in the 1990s. But if you are taking it from a country like USA, it shortens the time period and it speeds up the process of building important platforms like fighter jets, for example, which we are developing right now. So definitely, there are things, but we need to understand that all relationships are based on mutual gains. And if US stands to gain something from this relationship, then we also need to understand that India also stands to gain something from this relationship. And while there might be opponents to US, India coming close to each other in India, we also need to understand that there would be similar groups operating inside US also. So as a result of these kind of opposing interests, we might see these kind of incidents happening, the one which happened that we are talking about and we are concerned about. And we need to paper over these differences. We need to avoid emotional response to these differences. And as I said earlier, focus upon the core interests of what is the core interest for India, which India needs to pursue. Secondly, as other speakers pointed out, we need to develop our own capabilities to deal with threats like Khalistan or other kind of anti-India forces. Now, I would like to underline the Khalistan movement is practically dead in India. It has no strength whatsoever in USA or Canada. And probably the kind of publicity which we are giving to Pannu, he does not deserve it. He does not have the kind of following or whatever you can call it, which deserves that.
That is a fair point. The movement died in India a long time ago. The only countries that seem to be keeping it alive really are Canada and the United States by, giving shelter to these groups and in the name of freedom of expression, letting them get away with hate speech and hate crimes, because a lot of these people are on record as having issued death threats to Indians, including Indian diplomats. So I'm not sure how these countries can go on defending this in the name of freedom of expression when there has been a clear threat of violence to Indian nationals, including diplomats and their families. And yes, we must focus on the big picture. The India-US relationship is a very, very important relationship. We know diplomacy is complex and messy, but at the end of the day, friends should certainly not be provoking each other, and they're expected to be sensitive to each other's concerns. We leave it at that. On that note, Ambassador Suresh Goyal, Lieutenant General Sanjay Kar, and Dr. Vineet Prakash, thank you so much to all of you for joining me on Global Lens tonight. All right, let's now shift our attention to the rising tensions in the Middle East and the intensifying conflict between Israel and Hezbollah. Well, Israel's offensive against Hezbollah in Lebanon has intensified. Just today, at least 274 people, including 21 children and 31 women, have been killed in Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon. More than 1,000 others have been wounded, and Lebanon has described this as its deadliest day. The strikes follow Israel's military warning to civilians to leave areas where Hezbollah, the Iran-backed militant group, operates. These are the widest strikes in geographic range simultaneously conducted by Israel in Lebanon since the war in Gaza began, even though there have been exchanges of fire between Israel and Hezbollah for close to a year now, since the 7th of October, when the Israel-Hamas war erupted in Gaza. But the escalation that we've seen in just the last few days, especially in the last 24 hours, seems to be most intense yet. And as fears of a wider regional war grow, Hezbollah's second-in-command has said a battle without limits is underway, and that the group, in fact, launched some of its own deepest strikes inside Israel in decades. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, meanwhile, is said to be considering a plan to force all Palestinians out of northern Gaza, to lay siege to Hamas and force the release of the remaining Israeli hostages. It is not clear how many of the casualties that have been caused today in Lebanon are Hezbollah militants or civilians, but many of the Israeli strikes, make no mistake, targeted residential areas where Hezbollah has a strong presence, and local media has reported, as we just mentioned, that many women and children are among the victims. Lebanon's health ministry has said scores of women, children and medics have been killed and wounded in these Israeli strikes. The airstrikes have intensified pressure on Hezbollah, which last week suffered an attack which its leader Hassan Nasrallah called an unprecedented attack in the history of the group, after thousands of pagers and walkie-talkies used by its members exploded. The operation was widely blamed on Israel, which has not confirmed or denied responsibility. In another major blow, an Israeli airstrike on Beirut's southern suburb on Friday targeted senior Hezbollah commanders, killing 45 people. On that occasion, Hezbollah said 16 members of the group were among the dead, including senior leader Ibrahim Akil and another commander, Ahmad Wahabi. In the wake of those attacks on pagers and walkie-talkies used by Hezbollah gunmen, Iran's elite Revolutionary Guards Corps, or IRGC, has now ordered all its members to stop using any type of communication devices. One of the security officials has said that a large-scale operation is currently underway by the IRGC to inspect all devices, not just communication equipment. He said most of these devices were either homemade or imported from China and Russia. Iran is concerned about infiltration by Israeli agents, including Iranians, on Israel's payrolls, and a thorough investigation of personnel has already begun targeting mid and high-ranking members of the IRGC. This includes scrutiny of their bank accounts, both in Iran and abroad, as well as their travel history and that of their families. In a coordinated attack, the pager devices detonated last Tuesday across Hezbollah strongholds, and on Wednesday, hundreds of Hezbollah walkie-talkies exploded. Those attacks killed at least 39 people and injured more than 3,000. Lebanon and Hezbollah say Israel has been behind these attacks. Israel, as we said, has neither denied nor confirmed its involvement. There is widespread concern now amongst Iran's ruling establishment. IRGC officials have reached out to Hezbollah for technical assessments, and several examples of exploded devices have been sent to Tehran for examination by Iranian experts. The Islamic Republic's main concern, reports suggest, is the protection of the country's nuclear and missile facilities, particularly those that are underground.
For those who have not yet understood, I want to clarify Israel's policy. We do not wait for a threat. We anticipate it. Anywhere, in any arena, at any time. We eliminate senior officials, we eliminate terrorists, we eliminate missiles, and there is more to come. Whoever tries to hurt us, we hurt them even more. I promised that we would change the security balance, the balance of power in the north. That is exactly what we are doing. We are destroying thousands of missiles and rockets directed at Israeli cities and Israeli citizens. Complicated days are ahead of us, and I ask the citizens of Israel two things. First, listen to guidance from the Home Front Command. It saves lives. Second, we stand together with determination, responsibility, and patience. Together, we will stand firm. Together, we will fight. And with God's help, together, we will win.
I warned
Lebanese residents in the villages in Bekaa. This is a targeted warning for the villages in the Bekaa. The residents near buildings or inside houses where missiles or weapons are stored, move away immediately. Move away for your safety and security. You can see the operations we are currently conducting in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah intends to launch these weapons towards Israeli territory, and we will not allow it. Stay away for your own protection. Hezbollah is lying to you and putting you in danger. Listen to the warnings and messages that will be issued by the IDF for your safety and the safety of your families.
Let's now turn our attention to the Israel-Hamas war that's been going on in Gaza for 11 months now. Hamas Gaza-based leader Yahya Sinwar has been incommunicado for a long time, making Israel looking for evidence of his possible death. Reports by Israel's public broadcaster, Kan news outlets such as Haaretz, Maariv and Walla and the IDF Military Intelligence Directorate suggest that Sinwar may have been killed in recent Israeli strikes in Gaza. However, there is no concrete evidence to support this claim. The Shin Bet agency reportedly believes that he is still alive. Now, according to the Times of Israel, some reports quoted sources stating that the elusive Hamas chief, who has been hiding in tunnels in Gaza since the 7th of October last year when the war began, has a history of going off the radar before re-emerging to deliver messages related to the ceasefire negotiations or other issues. Security officials cited by multiple outlets say any assertion of Sinwar's death is currently speculative and lacks a solid basis. Haaretz, quoting sources, has reported that Israel bombed tunnels in areas where Sinwar was to be hiding, but again there is no definitive evidence that he has been harmed or killed. He may be deliberately maintaining a low profile. The military's response to queries has been that we have no information confirming or refuting this claim. Since the 7th of October last year, when southern Israel came under attack from Hamas terrorists, and this was reportedly orchestrated by Yahya Sinwar, Israel has targeted key figures within Hamas, including the group's military wing chief Mohammad Daif and Khan Yunis brigade chief Rafaz Salameh. Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh and deputy chief Saleh al-Aruri were also killed in drone strikes in Iran and Beirut, respectively, earlier this year. Reports say Yahya Sinwar and his brother Mohammad remain high-value targets for Israeli forces, yet attempts to locate them have so far proven unsuccessful. Okay, let's now turn our attention to India's neighbourhood. Sri Lanka's new president, Anurag Kumara Dissanayake, has been sworn in as Sri Lanka's new president. He's promised clean politics as the country recovers from its worst economic crisis. The Marxist lawmaker won the presidential election in Sri Lanka after the second round of vote counting. Dissanayake was declared winner finally over the weekend by the Election Commission. This was the first time that the Sri Lankan presidential election went to second round of counting. He is a Marxist leader and his win has taken many by surprise. But then there are those who say that the Sri Lankans trust him with the revival of the economy. All right, as we wrap up this edition of Global Lens, here's some news from the world of entertainment. Filmmaker Kiran Rao's directorial Lapata Ladies has been chosen as India's official entry into the 97th Academy Awards, popularly known as the Oscars, for the Best Foreign Language Film category. Starring Nitanshi Goel, Sparsh Srivastav and Pratibha Ranta in their Bollywood debut, along with seasoned actors like Chaya Kadam and Ravi Kishan, Lapata Ladies won over its audiences. The amusing plot about two brides getting lost because of an unfortunate mix-up struck a chord with moviegoers, while the convincing performances by the team certainly won hearts. The film, in addition to being an entertainer, carries a powerful message on feminism, women's empowerment in rural India, and smashing the patriarchy without in any way being preachy. And that, in fact, is the statement that was issued by filmmaker Kiran Rao, for whom this is most certainly a big moment. Her movie going to the Oscars as India's official entry. She has expressed her gratitude and sense of honor over this selection. Now, of course, we'll all keep our fingers crossed and hope that Lavata ladies will win over the Academy, just as it has won over its audiences at home here in India. Well, that's all the time we have on this edition of Global Lens. Thanks so much for watching. Do join us again at the same time tomorrow.
Why is the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
As a Telangana person, I will not accept.
How do ordinary folks deal with this?
This was the kind of terrain that mountaineers basically climb on. You're talking of peaks of 15,000 and 16,000 feet. You have trouble breathing, the cold, the high altitude, the dizziness, the enemy staring at your face. And in some of those cases, the Pakistanis were not even expending ammunition. They were throwing rocks at the Indian soldiers. That's how close it was.
This and more. Streaming on News9 Plus. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. Here are the top headlines we're tracking at this hour. The Supreme Court has said that storage of child pornographic material is an offence under Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act. With this, the Apex Court set aside a Madras High Court order. The case relates to a 28-year-old man charged with downloading child pornography on his phone. Prime Minister Narendra Modi convened a roundtable with top American technology CEOs focusing on innovation, collaboration, and India's growing tech space. The meeting, held at the Lotte New York Palace Hotel, was part of his 3-day visit to the United States. The newly sworn-in Delhi Chief Minister Atishi made a symbolic gesture by placing an empty chair for Aam Aadmi Party leader Arvind Kejriwal next to her. Atishi is the third woman Chief Minister of Delhi after Sheila Dikshit of the Congress Party and Sushma Swaraj of the BJP. West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee has written another letter to Prime Minister Narendra Modi about the flood situation. She reiterated that Damodar Valley Corporation released water from its reservoirs without consulting her government, inundating many districts. Amid the row over alleged presence of animal fat in Tirupati laddus, a cleansing ritual was performed at Tirumala temple to undo the so-called desecration during the previous YSR Congress regime.